I am delighted to be able to speak on this topic. I've wanted to do it for a long time. So it says a strange story of Armentrout sisters, and more precisely, we have 4 unmarried daughters of a family who had 6 children without marriage, okay? And my question for a long time has been, how's that? Okay, what's going on there? And this probably isn't the sort of talk that you hear people, discussing what used to be called illegitimacy. But anyway, it's something I wanted to talk about. So when I started teaching, there was a piece of paper on my desk, and it said, how to be a good teacher. And it said the first thing, write your name in big letters on the board, okay? Done. Okay. It also said, say something about yourself, which is sort of unusual. You generally get a teacher, they do all this stuff, you don't know anything about them and all. And so I would say something about myself, and so that's what I'll do here, although Penny's already started that. Yes, I was born in Rockingham Memorial Hospital, as perhaps almost all of you were, in 1946, but my father was a naval officer, and we went to the Philippines when I was just 6 months old. It was an interesting time. My grandmother Kaylor thought that Philippines was populated only by cannibals and unsurrendered Japanese soldiers, and that we would not come back alive, okay? But we did, and then we went all over the place. And so I've never really lived in Harrisonburg except those first 6 months, but I have come back quite frequently. I wanted to say a couple other things. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak. Besides being a member of this historical society, I'm also the member of 2 other ones in Massachusetts. We live in Massachusetts in the summertime, and one is in our town of Watertown, Massachusetts, which was founded in 1630. And then also Lexington, Massachusetts, shot heard round the world, Lexington. And I want to say, I think this place has better activities than either one of those, okay? And thank you. I'm not just brown-nosing the people back there. I really do believe that this place has more varied, better activities than they do. Lastly, I regret the non-attendance of my cousin Diane Cline Davis, because she just had surgery on Monday, and she's still in Charlottesville recuperating. So I'm sorry that she can't attend. Maybe she can watch it when they put it on the internet later. It is actually Diane who, about 35 years ago, I asked, would you please go down to the county clerk's office and find out what they may know about the father of our common great-grandfather. Because I just can't find out anything about him. And she did, and she reported back, Alan, it says his name, mother, and then where the father is supposed to be listed, it says illegitimate. And in those days, in Virginia, it was illegal to name the father of a child who was not married to the mother, okay? So it wasn't an option that they could put even the father's name there. They could not put anything there. So sometimes for such children it said illegitimate, and sometimes it was just left blank. But anyway, sweet cousin Diane was the person who first reported back to me what I had somehow sort of guessed. Okay, here we go. What are we going to do in this lecture? One is, why do I care? And I've started telling you about that already. Then we're going to talk about illegitimacy a little bit, and then I'm going to open up some discussion about why we believe there is the stigma associated with illegitimacy. I wish there were a better name. These children aren't illegal, and they were in the past, but they're not now. And I can't think of a better word than illegitimacy that doesn't take about 10 syllables. Okay, so I hope to use other words, but I may fall back on that one. Okay, then we get to the real story of the Armentrout sisters. And finally, maybe some conclusions and an opportunity for you folks to say what you thought might have been going on in this strange story. Here we go. All right, so here is me, and here are the 16 great-great-grandparents. Oops, except for that one. Okay, so here is my paternal line going here, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, oops, nothing, okay? Now, we know the mother of my great-grandfather, here's my great-great-grandmother Elizabeth Armentrout. She is one of the sisters we will be discussing in a bit, but who in the world belongs here? And I don't know. By the way, so, here we go, Cline, and well, I'll tell you why the name is there right there, but I actually have another source of the name Cline, and if you go up here, you see Peter Cline Kaylor, who is an amateur historian, and then here is another Cline family right there. No reason to believe this is related to these folks here, but in any case, so I have Cline both on my mom's side and sort of on my dad's side, and I say sort of just because Elizabeth's husband was a Cline, but that person was certainly not the father of my great-grandfather. Okay, let's move on. Quiz time. Okay, I did tell you I was a professor. Okay, so there, by the way, there are no equations in any of this, and you're self-scoring on this right here. Okay, so here are the questions. In the year 2020, so it was 5 years ago, which country in the planet, okay, had the highest illegitimacy rate, do you believe, and which one had the lowest? And by the way, the reporting countries essentially are the entire planet, all of North and South America, all of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and all. It just leaves out China and Russia and a whole lot of Asia. Okay, so all those other ones are what? That's right, and Africa is left out as well. Okay, so you be thinking about that right there, because here are the answers. Okay, it turns out that Chile is the largest, okay, and Japan and Turkey and Korea are the lowest. I put the 50% line right here. You see here is the European average right here at a little over 40%. Where's Britain? United Kingdom right here. And as I said, this is 2020, but I think that nowadays this has surpassed 50% in the United Kingdom. But think about all these places right here where are greater than 50%. That means that a child born in Norway or Bulgaria or France is more likely to have parents not married, okay? So things have changed a whole lot, haven't they? something to do with the culture of Korea and Japan. And by the way, this carries over in the United States as well. If you look at, where's the United States? Right here, a little more than 40%. Right there. In the United States, if you look at ethnic groups, you see that the Asians have lower levels than other ethnic groups. Okay, moving on. Okay, that was quiz number 1, okay? Did you do well? No, good for you. All right, okay. Are you telling the truth? Okay, all right, so now we have 12 folks who are famous children of unwed mothers, okay? And see how many of the 12, that's the second quiz, how many of these did you realize, okay? And it's sort of meaningful in some ways. Okay, so here it is, this guy, okay? All right, so here's old Blackbeard right here, and you may not have known that his mother wasn't married, but certainly you're not surprised by that being the case. And I sort of wonder about Edward Teach and Chet. Suppose he actually had known his father and things like that, and I was imagining a conversation between father and son, and father says, "Eddie, son, have you thought about what you want to do with your life?" And Eddie says, "Well, thank you, Father. I actually have. And after deep consideration, I've decided that I'd like to pursue a career in piracy." And Dad says, "Oh, gosh, Eddie, I know that you're into excitement and a bit of dairy-do. I was thinking that you would follow me then in a career as an accountant." And well, that didn't seem to happen, did it? Okay, so here's one. Okay, William the Conqueror. We know his French name was William the Bastard. And by the way, this wasn't they called him that in Normandy, and it wasn't so derogative, okay? His father admitted him. He never married his mother, but his mother was well known, and his father allowed him to become the Duke of Normandy and so forth. So here you go, another famous guy right there. Leonardo da Vinci. His father got a little bit involved in things and paid for some of his education, but pretty much Leonardo was on his own. Did you know about this one? Alexander Hamilton, okay, Mr. $10 bill. And here's another case where children born this way sometimes feel a great impetus to do something great, okay? Da Vinci, Blackbeard. They feel they want to do something. You know, there was perhaps some ugliness when they were children, and but they want to get out from around that. Okay, so here's Hamilton. Oops. John Wilkes Booth. Okay, went to a lot of fame, both in the theater and elsewhere, and okay, but his parents weren't married. Lawrence of Arabia. Here's another case where Lawrence always felt that he was sort of second class, things like that, and so he really tried to overcome that, but all through his life he felt he did not fit in. Okay, Eva Peron. Okay, so here she is holding her finger up and telling the rest of the Argentinians that they should not cry for her. And anyway, so Eva was. And her father just sort of dismissed her. So she really felt left out. Fidel Castro, again, he came from a wealthy family, except that his parents weren't married. And I say came from a wealthy family, meaning his father was wealthy, ran mills and so forth. Fidel started working in those mills. His father certainly admitted that he was his son, but didn't give him that much support. Moving up, Marilyn Monroe. Don't know whether you realize that she came from that. And she was sort of a troubled individual, we know, later on. Maybe that's a characteristic of these people. Okay, I don't know whether you realize who this person is. Anybody know who she is? Abba. Bingo. Okay, so she generally goes by the name of Frida. Okay. And she was later a princess when she married a German prince who has since died. Anyway, she was one of the two singers, female singers, in this rock group ABBA. Okay, now, what's her situation? She was born during the German occupation of Norway, okay? And her mother had cohabited with a German soldier, okay? Now, the Norwegians didn't look real kindly on that, so Mom and Frida stole away and sneaked into Sweden, where she grew up, okay? So that's where. But in any case, here's a lady who became a princess. Okay, Steve Jobs, there you go. And lastly, Oprah Winfrey, okay? Now, I want to say something, and maybe this is characteristic of the other charts that we saw about illegitimacy rates. The last three right there, did you say, I had no idea about that. Maybe did, but maybe had no idea. Why? It's because it's not so much a big deal anymore, okay? We just don't make such a big deal about that. But, okay, anybody get 10? Silence. I hope somebody got 1. Okay. All right, well, so much for grading that. Okay. And by the way, to add to the 11, the star of our show, this guy. Okay, my great-grandfather, James. All right, now he, this was when he was about 30 right here. Here we are in 1953, and this is just a year before he died, and there he is. By the way, anybody, you're trying to be too kind. Anybody notice anything unusual about him, either in this picture or that picture? You're being too kind. Okay. That is right. Okay. All right. Okay. And by the way, my idea of if I just absolutely can't find, any more information about who was his father, I'm just going to march around Kieseltown looking for somebody whose ears stick out, okay? And maybe that's a family member. All right, so let's talk about some of the other folks in here. Here he is, okay? And then his son over here, to the left is my grandfather, named Albert Franklin Cline. Went by A. Frank Cline, or just Frank Cline, became a plumber. Later on, he joined with his son, Frank Cline and Son, and then later that became Cline Energy. Okay, so there he is, and I just mentioned that because maybe you got your fuel from him or something like that. Here's my dad, and oh, by the way, notice my grandfather right there had the ear effect as well. Okay, you're all picking that out now. Okay, all right. And actually, here's my brother, and he had it for a while, and but his ears seemed to grow back to his head. So here's my brother, Dad, Warren Frank Cline, and Warren Frank Cline Jr., and the little darling right over here is your speaker, okay? Okay, so I was him late in life, and so, you know, if I had an opportunity now, I'd say, what do you know about your father? You know, did your mother ever tell you who it was or anything like that? Can't do that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about stigma and so forth about this illegitimacy thing. So the first one is, does the Bible say something about illegitimacy? And in the Ten Commandments, there's silence about that. There's nothing in the Ten Commandments that say that. But who knows? You know, the Ten Commandments don't say you have to pay your taxes and do your homework either. Okay, so there's lots of things you're not allowed to do that aren't in the aren't mentioned in the Ten Commandments. There is something, however, in the Ten Commandments about adultery. Does that relate? Not sure. Okay, so let's look at some other things. So I am absolutely no biblical scholar, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about. No, I'll do that later. Okay, so this is where the Bible does mention illegitimacy, possibly. And I have 3 versions of Bible translations right here. And the first one mentions bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord even to his 10th generation. Okay, so you get to pass this along for a long time. So you or 10 generations behind you cannot be in the congregation. Okay, so there's that. However, let's look at another translation. This one's from 1899, and it refers to something called, this is a Hebrew word right here, mamzer. Okay, and what it speaks of is not what's called a bastard up above. Oops, go back, Alan. Okay. There we go. Okay, mamzer does not refer to this bastard thing right there, but in fact, a child born of a prostitute. Okay, so that's not all the children whose parents aren't married. And then here's a more recent version, a translation, and it says a child born of an incestuous relationship. Okay, so we have sort of 3 different things where the Bible talks about not being a child born of some strange circumstances. Here it's bastard, here it's this child born of a prostitute, and here it's incestuous relationship. And those are all from Deuteronomy 23.2. It's just a different translations. Okay, so let's go back maybe 1,500 years then, and look at the story of Abraham and Ishmael. Okay, so Abraham is in his 80s. He's had no children. He's supposed to be the father of a nation. And in fact, his wife, Sarah, comes up to him and says, Abraham, you're supposed to be the father of a nation. You're the father of no one. And he says, yeah. And then Sarah says, okay, this is what you do. I have this maiden, Hagar, my servant, and I want you to go be with her. And Abraham says, excuse me? And she says, knock it off, Abe. Just go and do it. So, in fact, Abraham does it. Okay, and the child born of Hagar is named Ishmael, and he's then the next father of a nation. But then somehow in her late 80s, Sarah does have a child by Abraham, and that becomes Isaac. And so you have Ishmael and Isaac, both fathers of this nation. Okay. New Testament, what's it have to say about this stuff? Well, there's a lot of stuff in the New Testament about emphasis on forgiveness. Okay, now we just hear that, 10th generation stuff in the Old Testament. Now it's talking about forgiveness in the New Testament. And that's it. But also, Jesus talked a lot about the importance of families. Okay, so you have, on the one hand, forgiveness, but the other hand, gosh, let's make families strong. Let's make sure children actually have both parents around, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's what I get from, at least from the Bible. And then when did this sort of happen? Well, pretty soon. Okay, if we can see this well, what we see is that we have, here's Dad here driving out into the snow. You can't see that real well right there. But here's his daughter and her little child right there. The rest of the family going nuts. And this is 1851, which is getting close to the period that I'm talking about, with the Armentrout sisters. And, so, this absolute turning out of children was an attitude for a long, long time. And my question is, how did we get that way? How did that happen? So we're taking time out right now, and it's time for you folks, if you want, to try to say why you think there was this big stigma about illegitimacy. Now, I will start the conversation if you like, and one of them is this. There's no question that there are biblical stuff, traditions about sex. Okay? And the one way of proving that you've had sex before being married is having a child. Okay? So that was sort of obvious in that case. So when you're in this situation, in that situation right there, what is clear is this poor soul right here has had sex. Okay, and she's not married. Okay, so there's one thing right there. The biblical other things against sex before marriage. Okay, and here's another one. Who takes care of these children? Okay, if the mother is not married, who's going to be taking? Is that the responsibility of the family? Is it the responsibility of the community? Who takes care of these children? Is this just a ward on the state? I'm done. Your turn. Yes, ma'am.
Against the male who would be named by as the father. So you could find out the father's name like that. Even up into the 1800s for chancery cases, when children would appear and be named as the grandchild of this person.
Okay. And that's what we need, the naming of those.
If you would just repeat
the question? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so for the purpose of the recording right there, it has been said that the church would often have responsibility on these things, and it was also important that the mother name the father, and then that person could be possibly pursued legally and have to take responsibility. And this went to an extreme in Massachusetts. I just was reading about this, in that they had a midwife present at the time of giving of the birth, because they thought when the mother was in all of this pain, she would tell the truth about who was the father. Okay? I don't know how that worked. Okay, other ideas, folks. Okay, so sometimes communities, churches took care of these people. Sometimes they prosecuted these people. Okay, why was there this stigma associated with illegitimacy? I'm delighted to take responses. Hello? Yes, ma'am.
I've done a lot of thinking about this, having plenty of bastardy cases in my own family line.
Okay.
But I wonder about the stigma. Like, do we overemphasize today the stigma that was actually allocated in the past?
In other words, okay, so she's talking about, do we overemphasize stigma today from the past? And I'm wondering about that too, okay? Do we concentrate on that picture I just had up there and say, oh, you're in terrible trouble or something like that, and maybe it wasn't that bad, okay?
Well, this is the most compelling, one of the most compelling, I think, reasons is that somebody had to support those children, and that in England the parish was in charge of it, which happened over here too, and then the state took over, you know, so yeah, I mean, who is going to support this child? But at the same time, from our family members, we hear such stories of for lack of a better word, you know, Puritanism. I'm
Yes.
understanding that's not exactly the right word, and such. And I'm wondering, but I know there was a stigma, like Mrs. Gaskell's Ruth, like you showed that picture. Mrs. Gaskell's Ruth focuses on an illegitimate mother.
Okay.
And tries to, and redeems her because she has to die. But, you know, so there is this stigma, and I'm not really sure where it comes from.
Well,
I think that's the most...
And I've tried to do some research on this, and I'm just not having. Okay, so she spoke a good deal about where's the stigma coming from. Is that her? Yes, ma'am.
Well, and also, I would suspect that perhaps as we get into the sort of latter half of the 19th century, this also gets wrapped up in increase in immigration, urbanization, and sort of all the other social changes that are happening in American society, and kind of revisiting, you know, how much of that gets wrapped up in sort of both we're seeing all these big changes happening in the country at the same time that we're sort of harkening back to some ideal of this idyllic American family that existed.
Absolutely. And people are becoming more mobile, aren't they? Okay? And so maybe a man passes through somebody's life and then isn't in the community anymore, okay? He's out west. Folks? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think for the welfare of the child, taboos often operate in a very positive way. Other negative things. Just thinking of the welfare.
Okay, so taboos mean that don't you have this child in such circumstances right there because the child needs a father as well, and not just for the financial support, but other support as well, right? Yes, okay. Anybody else want to try something? I think my wife, Cousin Marie.
Well, maybe it's just, it's not so much the moral stance, but okay, if there's no father, mother can't support herself in those times, that means we have to do it. And God forbid, as it is today, and many that we, the people, should pay taxes and for those who can't support themselves.
Okay.
And so it's like make it a moral issue instead of the fact that, you know, we really don't want to fork out cash for
Okay.
this illegitimate child.
Okay.
We don't understand the money.
All right. Sweet wife.
Well, I was going to tell the story I thought Marie might. Marie is my cousin on the other side. And
By the way, Elaine is my wife.
yeah,
Okay.
in 1967, Marie's older sister Anne got pregnant without being married in high school in a small town in Maine, and the Catholic family went bananas and basically shipped her off down to Maryland to be with us and be at a home for unwed mothers, for a child.
Florence Crippenton, or Crippen, yes. Okay, yes.
That's right. Because they, at that time, back in 1967, couldn't cope with the idea that other people in this town would know that a daughter of this upstanding Catholic family basically had sex. I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
And so they shipped her off to have the baby by herself. And so that wasn't that long ago in our family. And I think that it was moral outrage. They went back. Only to say that.
And the thing is, the morality came, I think,
From the economics.
From
Yep.
the resentment. And that's a shame to say that, but where else could it have come from?
Okay.
To become moral, to consider. Yeah,
Okay.
to become, to be moral, to have these innocent
And actually, you know, in British law, for a long time, these children, no fault of them, but they were precluded from certain occupations and stuff like that. They suffered. Okay, thank you, dear students. And now we'll go ahead. Okay, so here we are, the German home of the Armentrout family, Zweibrücken, Germany. Here's a modern picture of it. You see it's here close to the French border right there. So what I say now is in fact exactly what happened with everybody in this room who had a German family who came over pre-revolution to the United States. And in fact, tens of thousands of people did come to the United States from Germany at this time, often for religious reasons. And what did they do? Well, here they are. And they, in this case, then they came from all of this region right here along the Rhine. By the way, the Rhine is here. And the Armentrout family came from here, floated down the Mosel River right here, joined the Rhine, and then floated down the Rhine. Isn't it interesting? What's our famous river that goes north in the United States? And you all shout at me, the Shenandoah, okay? But also in Germany they had a river. So when you're going downstream, you're going north. So anyway, why did I say that? They would float down here, take several weeks, come up down here to Rotterdam, and what happened then, if they were lucky, they got on a ship right away. If they were unlucky, they had a shipmaster who just sort of let them sit there and run out of money, okay? Then he would say, oh my, I'll sell you a contract, I'll pay for your way across, but then I'm going to sell that contract to somebody when we get to Pennsylvania, and then you'll have to work for them for 7 years or something like that, a period of indentured servitude. Okay, so that happened, and okay, so then we come over here and land in Philadelphia, and there was a town of Germantown, which is now just a neighborhood in Philadelphia, and they would start moving west, generally to the Lancaster area right then, and sometimes stay a couple generations in the Lancaster area, and then the map is way back there. Come down what was then called the Philadelphia Wagon Road, and now called Route 11 or Interstate 81, and they would come all the way down there. At some point, either in Maryland or Virginia, or sometimes they went all the way down to North Carolina, they would drop off and form a homestead and stay there. And now we're here. So let's see what in particular happened with respect to the Armentrout family. So you have this guy, there's this Anna, who came with her children in 1739, okay, from Zweibrücken. Okay, she had a husband, Johann Michael, who had died recently. It is possible he died on the ship. I'm not sure. In any case, he had died recently. So she was 40 years old. She had 7 children, and she was a widow at that point. The children were from 10 to 22. Okay, so there they are, 1739 in Pennsylvania. A little bit later, oh, by the way, one of those children was Johannes Philipp. And he was the great-grandfather of the sisters. So, one of the sisters is my great-great-grandmother, and then her great-grandfather was the immigrant. So she's sort of halfway in between me and immigration. The family was in Pennsylvania till 77, and then moved down here to what was then Augusta County, and after 78 was Rockingham County. They moved here, and they live in that area to the east of Harrisonburg. It was called Taylor Springs in that days. It's now Massanetta Springs. So they were living over there, and lots of Armentrouts around. Okay, Heinrich was one of the boys who was born in Virginia, so he's our first Virginia Armentrout, and he later was in the Revolution. Okay, Heinrich had a son, Jacob, was born in 81, and that's where our story sort of begins for this, Jacob. Jacob married Catherine Lutz in 32, and they had 7 children, and so let's look at those 7 children. Okay, so here we have Jacob, born in 1801. Here we have Catherine, born 11 years later. They get married in 1832. Okay, so here we are, that's what. But they're going to start having children. So the first daughter, my great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth, was born soon thereafter. And this is in question. The dates on all these documents sometimes a little bit funny and things like that. It is possible that she was actually born a few days before they got married. Okay, so that takes us back one other generation, but I'm not certain of that, so I didn't put that on the slide. Okay, so there's Elizabeth right there. Now she starts having a bunch of sisters. The second sister is born in 34. There's Sarah. Eveline is born in 35. Middle name Maria. Generally, more often people call her Maria. Amanda is born in 39. Esterline is born in 1839. We got enough girls yet? No, let's have another one. So Susanna is born in 44. So there's a big span here. And finally, after 6 daughters, bingo, they get a son, okay? And not only does they get a son, they stop having children, and pretty soon thereafter, poor Catherine up there dies. Okay, so here we go. So let's enter the 60s. Now that's the most important part of this little story right here. So I've marked Catherine is gone from us. And here we go, because George, which is the first one of these 6 children right here, is born to Eveline, who is unmarried. Okay, so this happens in April of 61. I don't know whether you remember, April of 61 is when Virginia succeeds and joins the war at that point. Is that relevant? I don't know, okay, but it's possible. But it is relevant to the next thing, which was that Elizabeth marries William Henry Cline in June of 61. So now the war has started. William is being called up to to fight, and for the next several years, he's not with the army all the time. Sometimes he comes back to home for a while, and then he goes back to the army and stuff like that. Okay, so here we have William right there. Now, William and Elizabeth have some children. And Sarah, named after the sister, is born to William and Elizabeth. Okay? And then John is the second one of the children born to unmarried, and now that's for Amanda. She's that. Now, William over here, the son, way over here, William dies of diphtheria in 63. Okay, so William's gone. And now we get some more children of William and Elizabeth. Oh, and at this point, Jacob dies. Okay, so they're still living in Jacob's house there in Taylor Springs. And, but sort of, Elizabeth, as the eldest of the children, is sort of in charge, but William, when he's home from the army, is sort of the man of the house. So that's what's going on there. And then we have Henry is born. This is now the third of these. Sarah has Henry. Okay, 1, 2, 3, right there. And Susanna, this daughter up here, hello, dies in 64. 64 is the worst of this entire story right here, because William and Elizabeth have a child in 64. That's sort of nice. Okay. So there's Jacob. But their daughter Sarah dies again, I think, of diphtheria in 64, October of 64. But the worst thing to happen October 64 is a battle in something called Rude's Hill, which is about halfway between Mount Jackson and Newmarket, just a couple hundred yards off of Route 11. William dies in battle, okay? So that's happened the very month after Sarah dies. Okay, now, if you go to Woodbine Cemetery, you might see where they have this sort of Confederate thing. Here is what is left of William Henry Cline. And notice, look closely, notice that this no longer... come on. Is it making anything? Okay. Anyway, everybody see they misspelled his name. Okay. Now, I spoke to somebody at Woodbine, and they think that really is something. But this is a cenotaph. This is not he's not buried there, okay? His parts are up there on Rude's Hill. And so this is all that memorializes him. Okay, let's go back. Sarah is dead. William is now dead. However, William dies, but Elizabeth is pregnant. Okay, and she has a son, John, in July of the following year. So, hello, John. There's John. Okay, so there we go. Now, the war is over, and Sister Esterline up there. Oh, why don't you work there? Yeah. Okay, here's Esterline, and she dies, okay? Eveline, who had George, the first of the story, is still unmarried, and she has a second child, a son, Harvey. So there's Harvey. And now Amanda, also still unmarried, has another child. And she has a daughter. All of these people right here have been sons so far. But she has a daughter with the strange name of Tom Anna. Don't know about what that is. Okay, so here's Tom Anna. And now we sort of skip forward a little bit. The son John right here. Oops. Note to editor, I'm okay. I'm calming down. Okay, don't do that, Alan. Okay, anyway, I believe this John right here dies sometime around now. Okay, so that was sort of a horrible year. Now, we are 3.5 years later, and we are in May of 1869, and Elizabeth has a son, William. Okay, she is not remarried. She has, after the death of William, she has a son, James, the fellow you saw, the ears person. Okay, so that was when James was born in 1869, and she is not remarried. So now we have, and you see right there the 6 children right there, all of whose mothers were not married at the time. Elizabeth had been married, but she wasn't married at this point. So here are the 6 right there of the 4 sisters. So now I'm going to go a little bit further in the history, what happens to these people as the years go by. And unfortunately, mostly the information I get is just from the census. And so it's doesn't tell a whole lot. Oops. Okay, so we move into the 1870s. Here are the children who are, and sisters who are living together in the old Armentrout house right there. So you see the legitimate child, Jacob, living with all the rest of these. Amanda and Tom Anna, here, remember, girl, she's someplace else, okay? And it's possible she just wanted her daughter to be away from all of this right here, but in any case, Amanda is living someplace besides in the household with her sisters and their children. Yeah, and I just said this. They, by the way, this is a strange thing. This is the trouble often with census. They get things confused. Anyway, they name all these people Armentrout, even though 3 of them, Elizabeth, James, and Jacob, were actually Clines. I don't know where Amanda and Tom Anna were at this point right here. So we move forward. Again, we're just sort of looking at census. And Eveline dies, leaving to her 2 sons $10 a piece. She dies. The Armentrout house is being sold at this point. Maybe the sisters are thinking, we've got to go someplace else. We can't just keep the house up. So they're selling the house. Elizabeth and James, that is my great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother, are listed in the Eiler house. If you go down Kieseltown Road, you see on the south side of the street, or the west side of the street, you see the still standing, I don't know what it's called nowadays, but it was an Eiler house. And it was a pretty wealthy house. And the Elizabeth and James are listed as servants in that house in the census, okay? Sarah and Henry, these people here, are listed as workers in somebody else's house right then. And Jacob, who is the one legitimate child still living, is living in an Ermine house and as a worker. Okay, now we move up to 1882, and now these folks are sort of getting married. So here's Amanda, who had 2 children, not legitimately, and she gets married, okay? So that's sort of nice in this, okay? And then the children start getting married. Now, by the way, when these children marry, when you put your thing, you're supposed to put your father's name, okay, on the marriage thing. And they say unknown, okay? They just say unknown. So that they really admitted to this. Henry gets married. George gets married, okay? So we have all of these people. We don't know about Tom Anna. James is younger, so he isn't married yet. But these people were getting on with their lives in spite of having this funny beginning. James, my great-grandfather, marries my great-grandmother, Rosa May, in 94. And Elizabeth dies in that same year, and she leaves $10 to her son, Jacob. Okay, and the rest goes to James, who's younger at that point. And now we skip forward a bit when James dies, and he dies in 1953. There is an obituary in the Daily News Record written by my grandfather, and in that obituary they name a father for James right there, and it is totally fictitious. Okay, he just cooked up a name, and that's in the obituary. It is no one who really existed, but he felt he sort of needed to do that. Okay, so James dies in 53, and I don't know when the rest of these folks died. It's hard to find out. We've mentioned all of these people, by the way, continued to go to church. There was, in fact, a church called the Armentrout Church for a while. But anyway, they continued to go to church. Elizabeth would go with James, and sometimes she would list herself as Elizabeth Cline, and sometimes she'd call herself Elizabeth Armentrout. But in fact, she didn't call herself anything, because none of those people across that line right there, with the possible exception of William, could read or write. Okay? That didn't happen until post-war years in Virginia. And so none of those people could read or write. Now, James, my great-grandfather, did learn to read and write, and according to my father, he really enjoyed reading. Okay, what happens next? Conclusions. What happened? Now, one possibility is there was a brothel someplace, okay? Maybe. I try to think about if there was a brothel, would they still allow these, I don't know about church attendance, would they still allow those people to attend church and stuff like that and bring their children and stuff? I don't know. I'm going to be looking at some legal records in the county in the next few days and see if somebody was charged with something or another and see whether that could have been the case. We have had the suggestion made that maybe there wasn't that much stigma, and so maybe these women did this and no big deal. Was it the case that they had some attachment to a soldier during the Civil War, and they thought they were going to get married, and the guy was going to have to go off, and the guy did go off, maybe he didn't come back, maybe he died, and there was a child left from that. Did that happen? Okay, I don't know. And now I will listen to you people say, I think such and such, or maybe so and so, okay, or something. Anybody want to try out? Yes, sir.
I have heard in just one or two places that there were brothels after the war in Rockland County, but I didn't hear any details.
Certainly we could imagine that during the Reconstruction times, that there would be stuff like that. What is my new friend at the clerk's office? What's her name? Megan. Megan has suggested that as well and said I should look at some legal records, okay? Yes, ma'am.
Do you think the sisters may have taken on boarders in order to pay?
They might have. The census list them living there doesn't have, the census will sometimes say, and so who works on the farm or lives there or something like that. It didn't say that, okay, but maybe they were temporary and they just didn't list those people. Yes, ma'am?
There's rape.
There is. So, could that happen so often, though, to all of those children? Yeah, yes. But again, if there was and somebody reported it, then perhaps there's a legal record of that. And there's another thing that we found out from Megan yesterday, which is, we have forgotten the name of it. Seduction? Okay, seduction. So this means, I really am going to marry you, okay? And let's get on with this other stuff, okay? And oops, bye-bye, okay, and then she charges me with seduction, okay, and so there would be a record of that. Yes, ma'am?
Do you have any idea of, in the community that the women were living in, or the church that they belonged to, were there other young women who also had children while being, could that have been a sort of microculture that was happening in their community?
Okay, I can say that I haven't seen that, but I did try to do this bit of statistics gathering. I went through birth records of those years, okay? And I would go down and I would try to find an illegitimate son, okay? And I went through all these pages and I found someplace between 1% and 2%. Okay, now I'm assuming only white. Now, the black population wasn't even allowed to marry for a long time, so I'm not counting those folks. But among the white population, I'm thinking it's 1% or 2%. But maybe there was a collection of these people who felt good together. Yes, Marie.
So I think it's probably different stories completely for each of the women. And what about incest? The father, he had lost his wife, and he had daughters. And And then William lost his wife, and the sisters were hanging around.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
made me kind of feel-
The father Jacob, is that what you mean? Because Jacob died.
No, it was Elizabeth died, and he was still alive.
Oh, you mean William with all the other children, the sisters there? Oh,
Married
it's possible. It's possible. Okay.
Or no, it was his daughters. They were his daughters.
Jacob's daughters
Yeah.
and the father being William. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. Yeah, you have to go back and read. But
Okay. All right.
But my thought was.
Well, it's not official incense. It's the
Yeah.
wife of his.
And then,
Yes.
You know,
Okay.
two instances of men losing their wives, and they're surrounded by females.
Oh, I got you. Okay, right. And in fact, had she died, he might have married one of those other sisters right there. Okay? Okay. So,
It happened in me.
okay, so there's a possibility there. More ideas, folks. Okay? Yes, sir. Ma'am, over in the corner. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe they enjoyed sex, I'm just kidding. I mean, they're allowed to, right? So my other thought is, there are 4 women all by themselves on a farm. I'm sure they were farming.
That's correct.
They needed hands on, they needed children.
Didn't
needed somebody
they?
to take over the farm if they want to pass it on. I mean, that's just kind of a wild out there kind of thing.
Okay.
That they were thinking of the future, the longevity, and how to maintain the property.
And gosh, weren't things awful in those times? People dropping from diphtheria all the time.
They were active.
Maybe they just wanted somebody to love. Okay. More ideas, folks? And yes, sir, again.
Has anybody in the family tried to do DNA?
Aha. It would come to that. Okay, now, if you know about the DNA thing and the Y chromosome, you know that it's passed father to son to son. You know, and that I get mine from my father who got from his father, so it is only the paternal link. Okay? So, yes, sir. I have had it done, okay, and I get these names, and I don't recognize any of them as county names, and I have tried to communicate with these people and say, is it possible that you had somebody who happened to be maybe a Union soldier or something like that living in Rockingham County in the late 1860s? And I have not gotten any help there. I have not given up. Okay, so I'm still trying that one right there, but DNA is certainly a possibility right there. Since we were talking about the pure paternal link right there, and that's the Y chromosome. Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the DNA, have you done the Y? Have you done the Y chromosome so you could see like where this guy, whether he had what kind of heritage he had? Whether it was like German, the typical valley mix, or something more unusual for the valley?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay, so if you're a man and you have the same Y DNA as
My father.
the mystery father, the mystery
Oh,
father,
yes,
your
that is
mystery
correct.
granddad.
Hmm.
So if you look at your Y, if you have your Y DNA tested such that you can see where this person came from.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Guess,
Typical of the valley? Or?
guess where? Absolutely. Okay. Bingo, Central Europe. You know, in the Western Germany area. Yes. Okay. Yes, it could. That makes it more likely. Thank you, ma'am. Very good idea. Okay. We are only taking questions from the left side of the room. Yes, ma'am.
So what are you doing next? Like, what is your next line of investigation?
Well, since talking to Megan yesterday, I'm going to start looking at these legal records and see if that helps. And even Megan seems interested. By the way, not only are these slides going to be available, but I also wrote up something years ago, essentially called The Strange Story of the Armentrout Sisters. And I gave that to Megan, and I'll give it to any of you who wanted it as available. In fact, if you do a search on Strange Story Armentrout Sisters on the web, if you just Google that, you will get the paper I wrote some number of years ago, and it has even more detailed information than I was able to say today. But you asked me what comes next, and there are more records available these days. Maybe I can find something. I'm going to try to recommunicate with the DNA folks and see if maybe somebody has popped up that is willing to tell me something about the number of generations ago. We're talking about a great-great-grandfather. That would mean that people my age would be a third cousin. Okay, so okay.
Do you know if, does Rockingham County have their court minute books online or not? Do you know?
Megan made it sound so.
Have some.
Okay.
Because it's so, if they're not online, you can't do a full text search using them on a family search. It's so tedious to go through every page of the court minute book just to see if you can find something. And that's where things like this would show up.
So I will tell a story that isn't funny at all because I went through it. When I was trying to do those statistics about illegitimate children, I said, okay, I want a page of the birth records for, I used the year 1864. Well, how am I going to get that? What I had to do, the only way I was able to search was use a name. So I just William Koontz. Was there a William Koontz born there? Yeah, I just went through all these names I thought were family names and guessed. And oh yes, somebody was born. So that would give me a page of 1864, and then I would count, what was going on. But yes, that was not indexed in a way that makes it easy just to look at some pages. Okay, the silent side, and Anybody there? Well, folks, I have wanted to do this for years, get your ideas on these things, tell you about this, get maybe a nicer approach to the topic of children born of unwed mothers. And so I've appreciated this a great deal. Thank you.
Hopefully there'll be a little more chit-chat and wheels turning, and if you have any ideas that spark later, let us know. We'll pass them on.
And you can post the video.
Yes.